like to welcome everyone to the Wilton Community School District School Board meeting, I know, last night. School Board meeting, Wednesday, November 11th, 2020 at 5:30. The mission of the Wilton Community School District is to provide an education that encourages continual progress through the improvement of one's abilities, the expansion of one's interests and knowledge, and the growth of one's character. Call to order, please. Roll call, Joy.
Tim Barrett.
Here.
Linda Duncan.
Here.
Rob Metzger. Jeremy Lees.
Here.
And Darrell Owen.
Here. Thank you, Joy. All right, agenda approval. Any additions, changes, corrections, Mr. Burnett?
No, give me a second. I'm supposed to call Derek.
Oh, that's right.
No, it's okay.
No.
Is it 2629 Joy down there, the advocate?
No.
No, that's
Two,
not.
High school.
High school. I knew it
Julie,
was
I don't
That's
know.
why I'm having a brain.
2035 is
Have you started?
Yeah.
I'll text it here.
I'll
It's
just say
2029.
oh, 20.
Yes,
I
yes,
said 2629. 2029.
yes.
Then it says Carissa's phone number, that different?
No, I don't know.
732-029.
Yep, okay. The things we do to keep the advocate in
Keep transparency.
town. The masked one, echo. Derek? This is Joe. We just started the meeting and Linda is asking if there's any changes or additions to the agenda. Rob Metzger is not here. Everyone else is present. All right. If you have any questions or can't hear anything, let me know. All right, Linda, to answer your questions, I do not have anything to add or suggest to take off the agenda.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion for agenda approval.
I'll approve.
I'll second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, minutes approval. We'll do the October 14th regular meeting first.
I move to approve the October 14th regular meeting.
Second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we will do the October 28th work session. Motion to approve the October 28th work session.
Second.
Session minutes.
That's the mask.
Yep. All right, I have a second, correct?
Yep.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, I see no public forum. So we will go straight to business financial functions. Please, Ms. Stacy.
Upload number 4 would be taxation fund, financials. And I don't have a lot to print out. Any questions on any of the taxation funds? I don't know if I mentioned before, but a couple months ago, our CDs matured at Wilton Bank of DeWitt, and the rates, renewal rates were lower than the interest rate we're getting at Community Bank, so we just cashed them all in. That's why all of those balances are zeros. I don't think I really have anything else to point out if there are not any questions or comments. Upload number 5 is the instructional support program. The revenues at the top, and then our budget in the middle of the first page, expenditures at the bottom, and the balance left per item at the top of the second page. So now you see the technology is not in the hole. We received the USAC E-rate reimbursement for the technology switch project that the IT department did this this summer, and we received $44,000 and some odd change back from that, and that went back into, against the expenditure of that project in ISP. So, any questions or comments on ISP? Upload number 6 would be self-insurance fund. The lower left-hand corner is medical, dental, and vision breakdown. And remember, the medical money that's accumulating stays in the general fund and the payable on that part of the financial report. And that stays in there when we transfer that once or twice a year into this fund. Any questions or comments on our self-insurance fund? Same thing there. Let's see, we had a CD in that account and it matured, so it's all in the CD checking now. Upload number 7 would be latchkey. So the usage at the top from September to October, overall it's the same, but there are a few numbers that change within the various programs offered in latchkey. Then if you look down in the revenues, the very bottom of the revenues, it says grants. Those are the grants that Director Owen is receiving from DHS, grants she applied for and that we were given. And originally we thought that we would just get them for July and August, and then she's still getting them. So we had budgeted 8,000 and currently we're up to 12. Which is a good thing, because if you look at the year-to-date revenues compared to the year-to-date expenditures, we would be like $10,000 below our expenditures without those grants. So, but due to those grants, we're actually a couple thousand dollars up of revenues over expenditures. So those grants have been extremely helpful, and she's been buying more activities for the kids, and she buys a lot of cleaning supplies also. And she's not sure how much longer we'll be getting them. Every month she waits for an email for them to say, hey, we're still doing this, do you want to apply? And if they send her that info, she applies, and we wait and see if we get it. So it's kind of a month-by-month thing right now. So any questions about that? Upload number 8 would be for the latchkey program, on how they're spending their money and anything in addition to payroll and payroll taxes. Upload number 9 would be nutrition fund program. I'm apparently drinking whenever Tara was drinking. At the top, lunch and breakfast usage, and so the first 12 days of school were like our regular program, and then starting September 14th, we went to the CARES program. And so today we've had 33 days of that, and they still enter everything as like the number of students who would be free or reduced or that would pay, although nobody's paying. It's all reimbursable by the feds right now. So, but that if they were paying, that's the breakdowns for the two programs. And then the financials on the second page. So if you look in the revenues for nutrition fund, under the USDA CARES grants to states between, that's a combination of actually what they're having as code to the CARES grant and what they're using the same money for, but also called the summer program, because normally we wouldn't have a summer program if it wasn't for the CARES grant. We've gotten a lot more money than we anticipated, because we didn't know this program was going to continue till the end of the summer and then start up again 2 weeks later. So just through getting paid for September, we've already gotten almost $115,000. So you can see we've started the year with a balance of $138,000 and we're up to $152,000. So, and as of right now, that program's going to go through the school year, unless still, if you look at à la carte, students can still go to à la carte and buy things, so that's still on track for what it would normally be, between $7,000 and $8,000 a month. So any questions or comments on nutrition fund finances? Upload number 10 would be the vendor totals report for nutrition fund. Again, anything that they're spending their money on that's not payroll and payroll taxes. So expenses are also up due to COVID because we buy a lot of packaging supplies that we would not normally buy if it wasn't due to COVID. And report upload number 11. So this is showing you between elementary and junior, senior high breakdown for breakfast and lunch, how many students were served the month of October. And actually, I believe there was one day at the end of October that they served over 600 kids, which was a new high. So, any questions or comments about the nutrition FDA report? Upload number 12. The first page would be the student activity fund. You see the first item, the drama speech, that would be the play. And luckily, that account doesn't always start with much money. Luckily, due to the new mandates and what's going to happen with attendance with that, luckily there's some money there in that account. And if you look at, I think the only negative that we have this month is the football cheerleaders. And they were not able to do their fundraiser. So, and obviously football is over, so we're going to have to talk with Mr. Hetzler and figure out how we're going to zero that out. And then we go to the second page, and moving very quickly. Under the FFA Enterprise Fund, there is now only one of the accounts that's negative there, but overall it's positive. And then, we have our flex spending account that we keep locally, and then the custodial accounts, which the school keeps the funding, but we do not technically own it, and Joy does the accounting for those accounts. So any questions on any of those? And the next upload, number 13, would be the period vendor reports for all of those funds, which total 4 pages. Any questions about any of the expenses from the student activity or FFA enterprise or custodial funds? Skip the report. Co-curricular driving should be next. And that would be driving for the October-November pay period for volleyball, football, and cross country. Again, due to COVID, there's no extra trips for any classroom or other activities besides those 3 sports. And then upload number 15 would be the taxation fund bills. Goes through 11 pages, so there were many purchases on the credit card this time due to finalizing our Townsend purchases, where every teacher gets $300 to spend in their classroom, of which we have 65 teachers. So there's a lot of expenditures for that. And then under on page 10, in the middle of the page, for the management fund, we're paying for an unemployment benefit plan, first unemployment benefit plan that we probably had in literally So with the school district, we do not pay in percentages like a regular private business. We pay as we go. So as you get unemployment claims, you plan for that, you anticipate those in your budget. And once an employee is granted unemployment, or a former employee is granted unemployment, then they bill us on a quarterly basis, and that's how we pay that. So we don't pay into a pot ever as a school district. So we'll see that unemployment claim probably for a few quarters, and then bill for White Pigeon that's the result of our fiscal year 20 audit for insurance. So, and they always estimate our work comp based on pay, and then when they actually audit it, we nearly almost every year owe more money. Fund 31 would be for our high school gym lobby concession building project. And then Fund 33 would be permissible expenses from that account, which most of these are for the internet and our student accounting. And we did have one building project. And Fund 34 is still money left over from the Townsend donation that they gave us for the building project up front. And right now just taking some of the fees for the Point Builders and MGA out of there until that money is gone. Pebble Fund, you can take equipment out of Pebble Fund that's over $500, and I believe we've been using a pressure washer that was Durant's because they have no water at their building, is that right?
Correct.
So, now they have water, so we lost our pressure wash one, so we had to buy one for ourselves. And then, at the end of this month, we have GO bond interest payments due. So, and that's GO bonds for the elementary building. So any questions on any of the board bills across any of those taxation funds? No?
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you so much, Tracy. We will go on to the administrative reports. Mrs. Austin, please.
We are quickly approaching November 18th, which is the DRM trimesters at the elementary. So we'll be at the end of our first trimester. If all goes well, report cards will go home Monday, November 23rd. We had our BLT meeting tonight, and there's a lot of concern about kids who haven't been here for 2, or some of them approaching week 3. And so we're going to make contact with parents, and some of those report cards will just be late, because we'll need to get the child back and do some assessment and figure out exactly where we are with some of those kids. So that'll be fine. PTO, both PTO and Scholastic Book Fair, their numbers were way down because they had to go virtual with their sales this year. And, you know, it's kind of to be expected, so it's just a byproduct of 2020. Positive byproduct, though, our parent-teacher conference at our BLT meeting, we were at like 97, almost 98%, which we're always at 90-something, but I think that's probably our highest ever. So that worked out well. The teachers would like to continue, they made the decision tonight, they'd like to continue some form of that. So I think what we will do, and even open house, the K3s really like going to the people's homes. So I think, you know, that again, is a positive byproduct that came out. Next year the goal will be for 4 to 6 to have normal open house. And then our pin night, we're going to keep it always virtual because it's 2 weeks after the parents have already been here. And that always has been kind of a, you know, it's a lot to ask the parents. So we're going to keep that virtual, and then parent-teacher conference, we're going to keep the sign-up the same way and then offer both options. They prefer to do it virtually, it'll be virtual. They prefer to come in, hopefully by then, it will be great. So that's kind of where we are with some positive changes. Our iBlock scores are in the middle of the page. Again, they're not really official because we had a lot of kids who came in partway through the cycle or left and weren't able to be tested. So, I mean, the majority of the kids are here. So I think we can make decisions based on this. The master of the skill column is the kids who tested out of whatever skill group they're in. So for IBLOC, you screen them with a screener, and they are words, CVC words, which is a consonant, vowel, consonant, so they're not a real word. We have to know if they can sound the word out. And so then, based on how far they get in the screener, they're put into groups, and then for a 15-day cycle. So the mastered skill represents the percentage of the kids that got graduated from the cycle they were in. Shows quality instruction and that works. The benchmark, we use 95% materials for the goal of kids getting to 95%. That's everybody's benchmark. They should be at 95%. And you can see we're a long way from there. Of course, the grade level of concern, as we've talked many times, is fourth grade. And that's why we're doing all those things in fourth grade to make that happen. So hopefully we'll see that number jump exponentially soon. Our school with Leader in Need sets a school goal in math. This year it is, we talked a lot about that fact fluency. So when we tally up our pre-tests, it was at 35%. So that'll be what we're trying to improve. Always the goal there is 80%. Elementary music, Stevie will be sending home, instead of doing a concert in the elementary, we just couldn't quite figure out how to make that work. So what she's doing is kind of sending home, every month her goal is to send home a snip from every classroom to the parents of what the kids are doing. So we'll see if technology can help us with that. With our inability kind of to send much through JMC, you may have to alter that a little bit, but we're working on it. And she's hoping to get the first round through before Thanksgiving. Other than that, we have a walking club that's starting. We just finished the particulars of that today. The good part of recess is we're all spread out. The bad part of recess is the kids over at softball field don't have a lot to do. They don't have the equipment, they don't have the turf, so we're gonna have a walking club that we have developed, and we've got little feet for every lap they walk. So we got that going on. We're gonna start that tomorrow. Stay tuned. And today we had, for our professional development, we had all our teachers work on their ALICE Year 3 training, so we got them all trained. Any questions on Little People Land?
Sounds great, Denise. Thank you very much. On to Mark.
Well, our parent-teacher conferences are not 97, 98, or even 7.
Really?
So,
Ed used to get that.
yeah.
No, he never did. He always was jealous. This is awesome.
Yes, always.
That's a fact.
Yes.
Anyway, I promised you that I would give you the percentages of attendance for the conferences back in October when we did them virtually, comparatively to last October. And as expected, you can see that we did decrease quite a bit there. Obviously, COVID played into that, but reaching out to parents and being able to talk on the phone or email or whatever with that. So 10th grade is really the only class that had an increase. Everybody else was down. But again, it's part of 2020 where we're at. So anyway, I wanted to just let you know where we stand there. Our first grading period is done. The first quarter has ended. We have finalized grades, and we're on to the second quarter, and the semester ends on January 15th. So our eligibility period is also at 15 days. It's almost, it started on the 27th, and it's almost done, I think. No, what did I do put here? Yeah, I think it's done this week sometime. It's on the calendar, I don't have it for me, but it was 15 days from the 27th, whatever that is. So we're on to our 30-day eligibility check will be at the end of the semester. So that's the big one the state requires. So that's what we're working toward now. Professional development, we continue to work on AIW, and I know we talk about AIW a lot, and you guys as board members probably sit here thinking, oh, you know, it's always AIW, but I do want to give a shout out to our staff. Every Wednesday I walk around to every group, check in with them, and they are locked in, I'm telling you. This morning, they were scoring instruction from 5 different teachers, and they were going through the criteria. Susie Peterson, our consultant, was on one of them, and they're just doing a great job. And I want to give a shout out to the Hewitts. Earlier in the week, they were able to get on a call that was nationwide, and it was AIW folks that were on there. Some of the folks were people already involved with AIW in schools. The founder of AIW, Dr. Bruce King, was on that call, and Susie Peterson, our consultant, was on that call, and it was people around the United States. And we got called out on that call for our leadership in AIW, and the Hewitts were able to kind of talk about their work with Substantive Conversations, which is a part of it, and kind of put us on the map that day. And I know if we didn't have COVID going on right now, we'd have people coming in to view us. So basically in 3 years, we've become not only a model AIW school in the state, people are looking at us around the country. And if you remember how this started, it started at a building leadership team meeting, I think my second or third one when I was here, and the staff basically said to me, tell me about AIW, because I talked about that when I interviewed it from my previous district, and from there, our teachers have taken the lead. I don't deserve any credit for it other than to allocate resources and keep the train on the tracks. They've taken the lead, and that's why it's been successful. Top-down leadership does not work. It is shared leadership, and we have lots of people that are contributing to that, and that's why it's so successful. So kudos to our staff. They continue to step up and just lead that beautifully. Our National Honor Society induction happened, that's why it's a couple minutes late. We just wrapped it up tonight down in the gym. It's about 20, 25 minutes. Very, very nice. We did have to cancel the meal earlier in the week with the rising numbers, and we also had some staff out. We just decided that wasn't the best idea. And then with the governor's proclamation yesterday, that made us look really good, because it's probably a good thing we did, because we would have had to anyway. So that happened tonight. Our wellness meal is Friday, so we're going to be treating our staff, district-wide staff, to a meal from the Wilton Cafe. So that's happening on Friday. Bus drivers, custodians, night custodians, everybody's included in that. So we might have to do the walking club afterwards, but
We got feed for you.
It's mental wellness.
yeah, exactly. The high school played Almost Maine. We promoted that, and as of yesterday, we are only able to allow 2 people per performer to go to that. So you probably saw a social media post again today if you follow our page. We put the Iowa Public Health guidelines and then re-advertised it. And Mrs. Miller is working on how that's all going to work. We're going to have about 30 people in attendance both nights. That's all we're allowed to have with the new proclamation coming up. And that'll continue with sporting events through November 30th, according to the proclamation. But Mr. Hetzler told me tonight that the River Valley Conference is going to do that for about a month, and then they're going to revisit it. So when varsity basketball games fire up and wrestling meets, we're only going to be able to have 2 spectators per performer or athlete or whatever, and it'll be a ticketing system. So that's going to really impact how we do things, at least for the time being. So. And then the last thing, we have a Thanksgiving meal that Mrs. Dickman's class is doing on November 20th. So we have 2 Fridays in a row where staff will be fed, and that money is donated to a good cause. And that's kind of in place of their coffee shop that they're not able to do. So we have a lot going on. We have a lot of obstacles to jump over with COVID. And our staff is just doing a nice job. And I think our community as a whole is just jumping in and just understanding that this is the world we're in right now. It's not going to be like this forever, but in the meantime, we have to do what we can to get through it and keep plugging along. So, any questions about my report? All right.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Is that going to number 1?
Yeah, we just had one resignation, and sadly to report for the district, but happily to report for Mr. Dutchhaver that he took a job promotion. And so he is resigning at the end of this month as the JCL liaison and also our junior high student council advisor. So we've had him for several years, and he's been a strong advocate for relationships with our kids, and I know he's been one of Mr. Snavely's right hands. So he will be missed. Mr. Snavely, we work with the county to replace that position. They fund half of that, so they're gonna be involved in the replacement process. And Mr. Snavely got on the ball, unlike a teaching position, they just had to give 2 weeks' notice. You know, they're not under a teaching contract like teachers, administrators, et cetera, being an at-will employee. So as you can imagine, we want to get that filled because we'll definitely have a gap in timeframe of having someone on board. But they got on that last week, and as of yesterday, I thought you had 7 applicants already. 8 now, so, and it hasn't even hit the paper yet. You know, it's amazing through social media and our website and different places, so that's a good sign as far as having a strong applicant pool.
But we close on the 20th, so we're hoping, I've been in communication with, the court system, but we're hoping that week of this, November 7th, we can get those interviews in.
December.
Or December 7th, yeah, let's not go backwards. And then probably have that wrapped up before that Christmas break, and hopefully we can, January 4th, when we come back, we'll be able to go, maybe before that even, I don't know, but.
Depends on them, because if they're in a position, they gotta give 2 weeks' notice too,
Yeah.
so you know how that works. So, but anyway, the beaver train keeps moving down the tracks. Some people get on, some people get off, and we try to keep it full. That's all I have for personnel changes. We'll have a job description next month, starting that cycle for this year.
Motion to approve consent agenda number 1.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, consent agenda number 2.
It may look a little bit shorter, and the reason for that is there's a first reading of some of them under consent agenda number 3 that we found some tweaks that needed to be made. So just FYI. The 200 series is from the School Board Association as far as the powers, responsibilities, qualifications. The one you may find interesting, at least I did, was the vacancy piece. You know, you have to live in the district. I'll give you an example. I was early in my tenure as an administrator here, we had a board member that moved. And so if you no longer live in the district, you can't serve on the school board. So the board needed to appoint somebody until the next election. And then when the next election is, then, you know, on the ballot, or it's open to the public to fill that position. But I just find that, especially what we're going through politically right now with vacancies and fair elections and whatnot, it's just kind of interesting to read the language there about how they're creating vacancy on the board. Conviction of a felony, you can be kicked off the board, 2 violations of the open meetings law, or conviction of a public offense in violation of the oath of office. So anyway, it's just, I don't want to point anyone out, Tim, but you may want to take special note on a couple of those. So anyway, if that happened, we would definitely seek counsel. Otherwise, we'd be going out together and not following protocol. But there's nothing that I would recommend tweaking on consent agenda number 2. But I'm certainly open to questions and suggestions of the board may have.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda number 2.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, consent agenda 3.
Correct. The first letter A, Joy does a nice job of highlighting or bolding what the changes were last month in the first reading, so it's just a follow-up on the second reading of our anti-bullying harassment policy. And basically, it's just updating the definitions of different types of harassment. Okay. Are there any questions on that? We discussed that last month, but certainly we can go over it again. Letter B is the first reading of policy 201, the Board of Director Elections. Isn't it hard to believe that you've been on the board already for almost a year? Yeah, it goes fast. So we had to update that because the old policy said it was in September. So we need to update that to say November. Nothing major, but policy needs to meet practice. And then,
Same thing, right?
same thing on the oath of office and the term of office. Yeah, 201 talks about November, odd numbered years. I guess I went out of order because my computer skipped to 202.3 right away, so I apologize. And then on that 202.2, it just takes out annual election to school election. Back when Linda started on the board, there was an election every year. There were 2 members on 1 year, 2 members on the second year, and then the third year was 1 member.
And it was for 3-year term.
And a 3-year term. Yeah.
Now, how is it now? Is
It's,
2 and 3 members up every other year, and every 4-year term. Yep. So yeah, that's been the change since we started as. Which makes it interesting, if you do have a vacancy,
yeah.
you know, if there's a vacancy now, they'd be on for a year, but let's say a month after you were sworn in, Jeremy, you took promotion at Highline and moved to wherever, that person that would be appointed would go to the next board meeting, so it almost had a 2-year term. But then that position wouldn't be for 4 years, it'd just be for 2 to fill out the original term that you had, which was a 4-year term. So, kind of like NFL football rules of the game. Just how it works. Questions under consent agenda number 3?
To approve consent agenda number 3.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries, all right. Individual consent, this looks like a Stacy.
Yep. Stacy can explain it. It's for the 8 open and ruled out students we must pay other districts for.
Which we talked about at the work session.
Yes, I went over it, at the work session. So this is the actual picture of the application, where you can see how they actually, I have a link I can click on, and I go in and I can see all the students, and they highlight the ones that weren't on our account prior, and then I check to make sure I agree with that. And then when we pay for open enrolled out students, you always pay the previous year's cost per pupil, so they use that. Also, that's the $68.80 per pupil, so 8 times $6,880 is the $55,040 that we're asking to expand our spending authority, so that we're paying for these kids that we've never received a penny for. So that's what that's about. So it expands the spending authority of our unspent balance. But you have to apply for that in order to receive it.
Do you need a motion?
I didn't say that.
Yep, individual action item. Yep.
Okay.
I move to request the SBRC application be submitted.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries, all right. B.
Yeah, strange as it sounds, we're looking at the fiscal year 22 already. And we, by Iowa law, that changed a couple years ago, we have to have a hearing, a public hearing prior to that board meeting to approve the calendar, to give the public opportunity to weigh in if there's anything they want to discuss about the calendar. What I have in front of you is a proposed calendar that pretty much mirrors what we're doing this year as far as starting on a Wednesday. Christmas break is the same length, it just happened to fall very similar. The only difference in this year's calendar really is this year's particular calendar that we're in right now. Spring break also happens to fall with Easter. Okay, so Good Friday is within that spring break. Fiscal year 22, spring break, Easter's in mid-April. So that's a little late to have a week off when you get that close to the end of
Yeah.
school. Therefore, the school year ends a day later because we have one more vacation day built into the calendar. So, that being said, we would start school on Wednesday, August 25th. And we would finish on the 25th of May. If we had a snow day, we would make that, we've got a built-in snow day on February 18th. If you look on the left, their calendar, snowmaker bays if needed, Joy, I found one little tweak. When I originally worked on this calendar, there's always a rollback after so many years. holidays get rolled back. President's Day in '22 is the latest, it'll be February 21st. So we changed that on here, but I didn't change it to the left, so that means that the makeup snow day is on February 18th. It says on the right column, but not on the left, for snow makeup days is needed. In case you see that.
Oh, yeah, this is February 11th.
So, are there any questions on the proposed calendar? We still have within that calendar 39.2 hours above the state requirement. The state, gosh, time gets away from me, but a few years ago, the state allowed districts to go to their days or hours. The hours equivalent's 1,080 hours to meet the state minimum. And our calendar has 39.2 hours above the state requirement. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, and some of that's because of our master contract with our teachers. You know, they work a number of days. That being said, it's nice to have a little bit built in there, because if we have a 2-hour late start, an early release due to weather or whatnot, we can pull from that as our bank. If you had everything, you know, tied completely and you had a 2-hour late start, you'd have to add that at the end of the school year. So it's nice to have a little cushion built in. And if we have a winter where, like we did 2 years ago in 19, where we had 10 snow days, the board has some flexibility to use some of that if they choose to. So, but that's why we're 39.2 hours above the state requirement. We also build the first semester to be a little bit longer than the second semester. If we have 3 or 4 snow days in the first semester, guess where they go? The second semester. So it tends to balance it out. Any questions on that?
So I can finally starting to hear some repeating.
Oh, being on the board second year?
Yes, yes. See?
It took forever.
And I always said, when we had 3-year terms, you really, it takes 3 years. And now you've done 4 because you did all the different, you know, the policy, everything, so that it does come around. But you need to be on 3 years. And then I always said, you need to run again, because now you finally got it. It takes those 3, and then you can start the 4th year going, all right, we've gone through everything, we've kind of, you know, it's starting to make sense.
Hopefully.
Yes, 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 so, yes, good. All right,
So we need to set a hearing date,
Oh, yes,
and
indeed.
I'll ask you to approve this at the December board meeting. Typically, we do it 10 minutes before the start of the meeting. Is it okay if we do it at 5:20? So my recommendation is to set the hearing date of December 9th at 5:20 p.m., the location being here in the Junior Senior High Media Center prior to the board meeting. If you want to cheat, you can just say, so moved, or you can repeat it. So moved.
all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, now, informational discussion item.
Yeah, we just have a couple hirings underneath there. Cole Anderson for wrestling cheer coach, and Mr. Kroger to fill in for Mr. Dutchhaver's leave as the junior high student council advisor. So those are the hirings we made in the past month. Maintenance-wise, everything's coming together down there in the south addition. Most of the concrete, if not all of it's been poured. They just were doing that the other day too. They're working on the roof, the east side they're working on today. And the weather looks good for the next week in terms of precipitation. And it's supposed to be, decent weather-wise, but they're used to working in all kinds of elements. But the big thing will be, we got that rain the other night, and it came down pretty hard, as you know, and that roof is not still 100% in. So there was water over everything down below, so they can't do electrical, things underneath until that roof is secured. The windows, which will be the final piece in terms of the curing it so we get heat in there and whatnot, are supposed to come in the first week of December. So, but otherwise, it's really come together. You can see the brick,
Yeah, brick looks nice.
it looks nice. Here's the topic of conversation, and I'll leave this to the board. I don't want people to accuse, the board never gets any input. You can see with the brick, I call it that second tone, which is, you know, they got the regular bright brick, and then they got that darker brick, which kind of matches the elementary out here. And we had this conversation administratively. I'll tell you what we think, but again, it makes no difference to me on what the board decides. I call it the asbestos tiles, those big long tiles above the brick on the gymnasium. You know, they got that brown look to them. Those need to be painted because, you know, they look nasty, okay? The question is, we originally talked about possibly painting them white because the panels on the north end are white. The panels down there are currently brown. The brick that's the offset color somewhat matches that. And it kind of has a nice look to it as far as flow, symmetry. And some of those white panels that we have, they show dirt. You don't know. So we like the idea of just painting it brown because A, it's symmetric with the brick in the building. It does look nice, and it's one facility, you know, it's the gym and the lobby, and it's easier to maintain as far as not having the dirty look. Thing we did want, the water tower came up. And so, you know, just as far as keeping that clean, you know, there's a lot of good ideas about color, but then it's like, oh my gosh, what if it shows dirt? How are we gonna clean that off in January?
We're gonna need a power washer, right?
There you go.
There you go, there you go.
Perfect.
So our thought was to paint it that brown to match the brick. But would you please look at that when you're making your travels and see what you think? We don't have to make that decision now,
I know
but,
exactly what you're talking about, I agree with Brian.
so, okay. The one thing I want to mention before we get to the pool board, and I know that you guys had a pool board meeting last night, you're looking at some of the upgrades over there. Certainly, every day is a day that could be our last day in school, depending on what our COVID numbers look like. And there have been some school districts that have had some outbreaks. And, you know, you see all the news, and of course, I mean, everybody tends to think, well, that our school's next. I compare it, it seems like it's almost like a snow day mentality. Schools to the west are closing, therefore the snow's gonna hit next year. You know what, it could. Okay, I'm not saying good, bad, or different, but that does not necessarily mean we are. And right now, our teacher, you know, our staffing and student actual COVID numbers are very manageable. Of course, there's a difference between having COVID and those that are in quarantine. Okay, the quarantine numbers are higher. But we're at a point where it's manageable. And if it gets to the point where it's not manageable from a staffing side, then we may look at doing a waiver. As you saw from the guidance today from the state, we have the ability as a district to go 5 days. We could go anything less than that. So we've definitely got some flexibility, but there is no precipitated, hard and fast, this is what's going to happen, because we don't know. But because the other area districts may be going to something, that means nothing here. And I don't mean that flippantly, but one of the variables is your countywide COVID rate. But that's different too, because what's happening in Muscatine and West Liberty may not be reflected in Wilton, okay? The biggest variable for us is what is our Wilton rate, but also what is our staff and student rate. That's what will drive the decision-making metric on if we happen to go virtual. Furthermore, we don't have to necessarily go virtual K-12. You know, we've had conversations here that, what's our staffing look like? Maybe we're in a situation where we're in school K-6, but virtual 7-12 too. So there's a lot of flexibility within that. And the good news is, we've got some ways to work with what we get done. But I just want to make a point, and Derek, maybe for you too, in the paper, where people wonder, why isn't Wilton or Durant going on, you know, going virtual. Iowa City is, Muscatine is, West Liberty is. That's why. So, what questions do you have? I'm sure you get asked that too.
The only thing that I had someone asked too, and I assume this could be manageable, would be what if Durant had a completely different situation and they had to close and you're still open, or vice versa? So, I mean, if they're having online classes, I mean, I would assume that we could set the kids in class and let them have the same experience.
Absolutely. If we had an outbreak in Durant, that doesn't mean we're going to shut down Wilton or vice versa. But the students that we do share going back and forth, let's say, for example, Durant were to be, let's say they were virtual 7-12 and we're not. The kids that we have going to Durant would just take the class virtual, most likely they're here, or I don't know, from home, whatever Mr. Snavely would work out during that block. But yeah, they'd still be able to get their education, but it would just be virtual, joining the kids in Durant with their teacher in a virtual platform.
And I'm assuming that, I think this could happen at any point, that the teachers on both sides is like, they're ready to go, right? I mean, if there's something happened, we're ready to do, what do you, I mean,
Mr. Snavely and Mrs. Austin have really worked hard with the staff as far as, we call insurance. You know, the time to buy the fire trucks before the fire. And so it's just, and I say the more work you put into it to prep for it, the less likely it is to happen. But if you don't do anything, odds are high it's going to happen. So,
Well, I would just add, we did the Google Meet last spring, so
Yep,
we're
yep.
very acclimated to that. We've been holding all of our meetings that way, obviously with IEP meetings and whatever, but from day one, we made sure the teachers got Google Classroom set up. So at least assignments and videos and all that stuff can get posted. Because I think, what do we have, 60 in quarantine or something like that right now? So those kids, I mean, we sent 5 home today. So immediately I email teachers and say, this student's out until November 23rd. So then they mark that down so they know that, okay, I have to post assignments, I have to email the student, let them know. Because in the olden days, a kid might only be out for 1 or 2 days. Now they're out for 14, 15, 16. I mean, it's a huge amount of time. So we're already dealing with that a little bit with having to communicate with students that aren't here, and a significant number of kids that aren't here. And then we have the online side of that too. So in a way, we're kind of already doing that, but we're set. I mean,
which is great.
we would just need to work out with Duran on how we're gonna do the
Yeah.
schedule, so we mesh all that, but we could do that in 20 minutes probably. But I mean, so yeah, we're set.
So if you guys, if it happened and you decided that elementary stays in and high school, junior high goes out, are you able to take some of your teachers from junior high and high school and move them down to a shortage that you all have?
yep.
We talked about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of our thought process of all hands on deck for 2 reasons. Number one, at the elementary level, it's much more difficult to have the delivery of instruction online like it is at the secondary level. Okay? And number 2, from the parental level, of trying to work with our families and childcare and whatnot, it's a win for them as well. And so we do have that ability, Jeremy. That's exactly what we've talked about too, of looking at that option.
Is there any way to incentivize some people to get like a sub-license? So if you go out, it's like when when you guys went virtual last year, Mandy's not, as a para, you have lots of paras that all of a sudden really aren't, they don't have an everyday job anymore all of a sudden. If you were to incentivize a para to get a sub-license so that you could transition them for a shortage down to the elementary, so you can keep those kids in the school more so, because your high school teachers are still gonna need to teach your classes, you just can't.
So we have a handful that did get their sub-authorization. The problem is, we have substitute teachers right now, we just don't have any substitute paras. So to pull them out of the para and put them in a classroom right now is hard because then we don't have any paras, so.
I'm talking about if you guys go virtual,
Yeah,
then a para is not as necessary as they are
Correct.
while you're in school.
we can put them down in the elementary.
But then when they're gone, while your junior high and high school is all gone, you can take your paras and if they had a sub-license, move them into the elementary to keep.
We could, but we gotta be careful because even if we're online, we still have to, those parents still have to support those kids online. So you're right, we could be a little bit creative with that, Jeremy, for sure.
And we'll have some flexibility with some teachers too, and even some support staff. To give you an example, if you're a counselor at the 7-12 level, That doesn't mean you're not checking in with kids or whatnot. But you know what? If we've got a third grade class where we can't find a sub, they can go down there and be in that classroom to do those things. So we've been thinking outside the box and just ways to, you know, keep everything functioning and trying to take care of everyone's needs educationally and also, you know, as a family. Because if we do happen to go that direction too, you think of the food service, you know, we still need to provide lunches just like we did this summer with the pick up and all that stuff. So we spent a lot of time scenario-wizing different,
Every possible issue
Yep.
that you can, yep.
yep.
Wow.
So, and the other thing too is if this happens, my daughter Hadley goes to Iowa City and they decided to go back online, but they're not going until next Monday. Unless it's really crazy, I don't see a situation where we decide on Monday at noon that we're going virtual on Tuesday.
Okay,
You know, that's tough for parents too.
Right.
You know how it was like last spring.
Yes, yes.
But we'd like to be able to mobilize, if you will, within a 48-hour window. You know, because if we're short people, we're short people. So,
Yeah, crazy.
one day at a time, one day at a time. So,
I just want to, real quick, over the weekend I received, I think we all did, an email from Mrs. Hartley. And I just want to do a big shout out to her. I think she has taken on a lot and I don't hear her name mentioned a lot. And I
She
just
does
want to
great.
be known that, you know, we really appreciate the hard work and time that she's putting into this.
I echo that 100%. Mrs. Hartley, our school nurse, puts in so many hours in the, you know, the stress of it at school, but just, it's a 24/7 role right now. Investigating, you know, typically she'll get a call that so-and-so has COVID. Well, guess what? She's got to find out the class, are they on the bus, they have sports, what do they do on the weekend? It's crazy. So no, thank you for saying that.
Yes.
Couldn't agree with you more. Anything on the pool board? I know you had a meeting last night, you're looking at some of the, you know, I know you mentioned Joe Ragus being there, he visited with me today, he kind of keeps me in the loop on where you're at.
We directed him to contact, I'm gonna get this wrong, it's not Precision
White
Builders,
Builders.
it's
Precision building.
Precision, it's not
Precision, yeah.
White Builders, right, to get, what they need to get it going, to either, how much of the 150,000 would be to get it started, as opposed to actual construction cut. We have to get a manager, we have to know what fees are for them to do, so we asked Joe to contact them to get more dollar amounts on there. But we're moving forward.
So you want a breakdown, is what you're saying?
Yes,
The
yes.
Breakdown of it?
Yes.
I can't talk very well today. Maybe the math.
And also they spent a little money on opening up the boiler
Yes,
and they were amazed on how nice it looked. I mean,
Good.
it's like,
yes.
it spent a good amount of money to open it, but what they found though is well worth it because the hoses and everything in it looks great right now. There shouldn't be any issues with anything like that, so that was really good to hear.
Mhm.
So,
No, that is a positive.
Yes, yes.
masks are now mandatory in the pool,
Mhm.
in and out. They're trying to limit people that are in, so basically, we would like you to drop your child off for the lessons, go back to your car, you know, sit somewhere else other than in the lobby. So she's really trying to push for that right now. So, yeah, we're doing good.
The only thing I want to mention athletically is, you know, you heard what Mr. Snavely said, and that's through November 30th, or as far as the 2 spectators. But Governor Reynolds, we're assuming, is going to make some type of announcement to continue that, or who knows, moving forward on that, but that's just where we're at right now. But all of our games, we will try to make sure we get them live streamed too. You know, parents or grandparents can't make it. There's only 2 people per you know, 2 for each athlete. That's tough.
And Ryan told me the December meeting, they're gonna revisit that. But
On the
they're
2nd.
They're gonna keep that in place, so it's only a couple extra days, but who knows where that's gonna go.
Yeah. So we shall see.
I wanted to mention that Joe and I were via email discussing with our financial advisor today for bonding. He's suggesting that we look at refinancing our 2015 series revenue bonds, which apparently I haven't had enough to do with revenue bonds, but I thought I was going to be done with that between now and retirement, but apparently not. So he said that he thinks that we can potentially save between $150,000 and $200,000 by refinancing. So the next few months, we'll probably be looking at some, doing some things in board meetings or possibly having a special board meeting or two to set that all up, to look at refinancing those. So that will be happening before I leave. Well, that actually won't happen. It'll happen after I leave, but we'll start the process before I leave.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Great.
All right, well, we have our hearing on the 9th prior to our 5:30 meeting. And the good news is, we don't have a work session this month because of Thanksgiving.
Oh.
So, but if something comes up, I will certainly, who knows? If we have a situation where we need to get together because of something COVID related, we'll definitely do that. But that's all I have.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Derek. I hope you had your mask on when you were sneezing.